doing just some Leetcoding this morning, and I'm picking up where I left off on one problem, and then I've got a couple of others lined up if we get through those. So without further ado, let's dive in. So this one I was working on yesterday or the day before. Just a little bit of background. It's converting a Roman numeral to a number, and most of my test cases are passing, but I think I had a problem with one of the submissions, or once I submitted it. So let's start taking a look at that. Okay, so I'm expecting to get 3055, or no, 3045 is what I'm expecting. And I think I missed an else here. So I think I was repeating this logic on X, which would make sense because that's how I got the extra 10. Okay, so let's try that again. Also going to be drinking some coffee, so I'll go on mute when I go to take a sip. Okay, so that looks a whole lot better, so let's go ahead and submit it. Okay, so we passed. We're faster than 5% of Java solutions, less memory than 35, so let's just look and see if there are any easy optimizations we can do. First obvious thing is take out my print statement. Printing to standard out is actually a pretty expensive thing to do. I'm going to adjust my camera a little bit here too, actually. There we go. Oop, wrong direction. Okay, so we took out a print statement, so that might help a little bit. And then this shouldn't be anything excessive, but let's try optimizing that. So we'll call that next char equals s.char. This has to be inside of the loop, obviously. So we'll call next char s.char at I plus 1. And then instead of accessing the array each time, we can just store that in a variable. That shouldn't really be a whole lot faster, but it might be a little bit. I'm getting all kinds of notifications from my phone app. So let's go through and replace those. And that's the only places I use that. The other thing I'm thinking is, instead of doing this calculation every time, we can do a Boolean. We'll just call it check next equals. So then instead of doing that math every time for size minus 1, well, and actually that would only happen one time per loop, wouldn't it? Each of these. Well, actually no. I had that in there a couple of times. This operation happens at least a couple of times per loop, so I think that's worth getting that out of there. So then we'll replace anywhere we're doing that subtraction and the comparison. Okay, so let's give that a shot. String index out of bounds. What did I miss? Oh, so we can't do that every time. We do need to check first. And then if check next char. So char next char. And if check next char. Then check it. So what's going on here is at the start of each loop, you might be your next char might be past the end of the string, or your index for your next char might be past the end of the string. So we're going to make sure that we have a character to check before we do this operation. So instead of just fire it in the hole, let's try a couple of test cases before we submit it. Next char is already defined. I was talking on mute. Empty character literal, and I guess I just have to give it something. So we'll give it an invalid Roman numeral. Okay, so that's passing, so let's go ahead and run the rest of our test cases. Those all look good, so let's go ahead and submit it, and we'll see if we beat, I don't remember what the numbers we were trying to beat. I think it was 35 and something. Okay, so we're faster than 61%. Let's just glance through and see if there's any other simple optimization we can do. But 68% is not bad. 5 milliseconds. So I'm just kind of skimming S size. Oh, got another print statement in there. So that's probably not helping. I think with that out, I'm going to try submitting again just to see if I can beat 68. My guess is the print statement may have had a pretty, yeah, okay, there we go. 3 milliseconds faster than 99%. So I'm pretty happy with that. So that's kind of the wrap up on that one. I was just finishing that one from a previous session, so I'm going to go ahead and close that tab and then jump to another Leetcode easy. And then if we get through that, we'll also do, or we'll start at least a tree problem of some kind, or a binary search tree. Okay, so write a function to find the longest common prefix among an array of strings. If there is no common prefix, return an empty string. Okay. And then flowers, flow, and flight. Okay, so on first glance, this looks like a pretty straightforward loop and current value check. So the algorithm that I'm thinking about would be set first character, or save first character of first string. I'm assuming we can assume that the strings are not all, yeah, okay, so each string will have at least, or no, we'll have at least one string but each string may not have any characters. So 0 is less than or equal to. I'm trying to interpret if that means, if this constraint means that every string will have at least one character, but I don't think so, because it's 0 is less than or equal to the string length. So I guess really we would just have a variable to save first valid character. And then we would iterate strings, testing if, or iterate, I'm trying to think that through. So we need 2 loops, but we need to iterate each character of the string, and we need to iterate each string. So I think that would actually be, I think the inner loop we would actually want to iterate the strings, and the outer loop we would want to iterate the characters inside of the string. So we would check the first character across all strings before moving on to the next one. So iterate, we'll just say nested loop 2a, iterate characters in strings, 2b, iterate all strings. And then just to add a couple of notes, 2c, we need to test for length of string at each iteration. So if we're iterating all the strings together and they might be different lengths, we wouldn't want to reach the end. And I might even just say if we know that it could be as much as 200, or we know that each string can't be longer than 200, then I think that's a pretty reasonable starting point there. So we'll set that as a private static final int max string length equals 200. That is something that we could calculate pretty easily with like a while true and then just kind of iterate as long as we can. But I think if we're going to test for length of all strings at each iteration, break if we're past any string, then I think that would be totally reasonable. And then I think the final thing is variable to save first valid character, variable to save index of last common prefix, and then we would just return any string from 0 to last common prefix. Okay. So that looks pretty reasonable to me. So I think I'm going to get started. Also going to take a drink of coffee first. I never recommend Leetcoding without a little caffeine. Okay, so let's get started with a char. So our current character. So this is going to track current character. We are looking for across all strings. And then we'll do an int last common character. Yeah, I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. And I'm just pausing because this could also just be the iterator in our loop, but I think if we want to do a for loop, then we'll obviously lose that value when we go to break the loop. So I think it's easiest just to save it outside. Okay, so then with our first loop, we're going to go int string iterator 0, string iterator, if I could spell, is less than or equal to max string length, string iterator plus plus. I know there's an argument for making this a little shorter, but I like being a little bit verbose, especially when you're doing programming challenges like this that are gonna make you keep a lot of things in your head at the same time. So this is our outer loop that we're going to use. So our string iterator is there. And then we also need to iterate the individual strings. So for that, we're going to do array iterator equals 0, array iterator less than strs dot length, array iterator plus plus. So now we're iterating all of the characters, and then we're iterating all of the strings. And then we need to do our test in here, keeping in mind that we might actually find a string with, yeah, so I'm trying to think of how we want to prime this, because we need to know what we're testing, and if the first string that we pick is empty, then that doesn't really give us anywhere, or we don't have a character that we're going to be able to check. But we also need to know, to quit there. So I think there are a couple of ways that we could tackle that. We could test if we're on the first iteration inside of the loop, or we could have a pre-loop that just looks for the first actual valid character. And I think that might be what I go with. So let's set up some priming here. And it actually, I think it's going to look like essentially the same, except that if we, well, and actually no, it doesn't need to be the same. We actually just need the inner loop, because I just need to loop the strings and find one with a valid first character. So let's go ahead and do that. So if strs at array iterator dot length is greater than 0, if it's greater than 0, then we're going to set current character of equal to 1, or no, 0. We need to test the first character of every string. And then we're also going to set last, or no, this needs to be strs at array iterator dot char at 0. And then last common character is going to be 0. Yeah, okay, so priming, find a valid first test character, and I don't know if there's an easy way to test if a variable is unset in Java. And the reason I'm curious is if these values aren't set, then I know that I didn't find any valid characters. I've got completely empty. So I guess the cheap and dirty solution would be that. And then if last common character is equal to -1, then I don't remember what we can return. I think it's nothing. Yeah, so if everything is empty, then we're just going to return an empty string. Okay, so now we know that we've got a first valid character, and we can start looping. So in here, in our inner loop, we need to make sure that every character at this point in string iterator is equal, but we also need to check if string iterator is Boolean should quit. And I know that's a little bit, or really we'll call this a Boolean should continue, just for simplicity. And this is a little bit of a poor man's solution, but the reason is I need to, if I found a string, if I found that I am past the length of a string, I need to break twice. So I need to break out of both loops, and sometimes that's just easier to do with this kind of thing. So and we'll test if should continue, or if not. Yeah, so we're going to go back to should quit, unfortunately. So if should quit, break. Okay, and if string iterator is greater than or equal to strs at array iterator dot length, then should quit is true, and we're going to break. So if we are at the end of a string, stop searching. Okay, so if we get past this, then we know that we want to continue our search. And in that case, we're going to test if the string equals the last common character, or current character. So if strs at array iterator if strs at array iterator dot char at string iterator is equal to current character, then we are good. So actually, this case isn't very interesting, but it's if it's not equal to current character, then we suddenly care a lot. And here we want to set should quit equal to true, and we want to break. So if we have found an uncommon character, quit. And then really, if we get past both of these, then we know that we want to continue our search. So in this case, we've checked the entirety of current character, and we need to iterate and continue. Although now that I'm saying that, I don't know if I like this approach, because I don't have a great way of updating what my current character is, because I don't know which string is the longest. So now I'm debating if this is really the correct approach. And I might actually consider, because yeah, what I didn't think about was how to update these variables inside of this nested loop. And I think that could actually be a little bit problematic. So obviously we could reiterate and do something clever like check the next character or gather the next character for the longest string. Well, actually, let me pause there because it doesn't really matter which string I pick because it's the longest common prefix between all strings. And by the same token, I don't really need to iterate through the maximum length. And I actually don't need to find the first valid character either, because I could just pick the first string arbitrarily. And if the first string happens to be flow, then the longest I'm going to check for is 4. But I can't have a fifth character in common across all strings anyways, because there isn't a fifth character. So let's refactor that a little bit. So really, this can just be an if statement. So if strs at 0.length, and I think I'm guaranteed to have at least one string. So if strs at 0.length is greater than 0, then our current character is going to be equal to strs at 0.char at 0, and our last common character is 0. And I think this stays the same, or this can be consistent. And so that doesn't need to change. And then I think all of this logic still stands. I need to test if I'm past the length, and then I should quit. And I need to test if I am past, or if I've found a non-matching character, and then I should quit. And then here I just need to update whether I need to update my current and last string. And I think instead of trying to iterate, well, I think that should be fine. No, actually, I'm going to change this. So if I change this to be strs at 0.length, now I know that I can always just use string iterator without worrying if I'm past the max length of strings. So then I can just use that directly to update my current and last common. So at this point, I want to increment last common character, and I want to update current character to be strs at 0.char at string iterator. Okay, let's just do a scroll through and see if anything looks out of place. That should be fine. Priming makes sense to me. Last common. That might be a bit of a poorly named variable, but I think that's fine. Oh, and then we need our return values. So then, at this point, I know that I've found so now I'm trying to think through. So I need to grab let me look up the Java substring, because I need to grab the first index through the last common, and I might be able to just trust that. So if I get a substring of 0 and 0, if that returns an empty string, then I think that solves my problem there. S.substring. Okay, start end index, typically type 2. Yeah, because I want to specify start and end. Let's see if they've got an example. So 2 and 4, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I think that should work because they passed in 2 and 4. So J 0, 1, 2. This is kind of small, isn't it? I'm trying to zoom in and my laptop is fighting back. Or at least maybe Java T-point doesn't zoom too well. But they dropped the T off the end there is what's important. So let me jump back to Leetcode, and we should just be able to return strs at 0.substring 0 to last common character. It's possible I have an off by 1 error there, but anytime you're doing this kind of thing, it's good to just try it. Cannot find symbol on line 19. Is that the .length method? Let's try it, just see what happens. If not, I'll look it up. Okay, yes, that's a method. On arrays, it's an attribute, and on strings, it's a method. So let's just pop through and update that anywhere we're using it. Yeah, that looks good to me. Let's give it a shot. Oh, of course. So here I'm actually testing against the array, not a string inside of the array. So there it is, an attribute. .length, this one should be a method. Current character may not have been initialized. So we'll just set that to, I don't think I can do that. So if I don't run this loop, then I know that I'm not going to do anything useful. So I'm just going to give that an arbitrary character. And if I don't execute this loop, then last common is -1, and I'll exit. So that should be a pretty safe operation, or a pretty safe kind of, I don't know if it's a cheat, but it's a little bit of a trick to get Java to ignore that. Okay, so first test case ran. Let's go ahead and take a look at the rest of them. Okay. And dog, race car, and car did not work. Come on. Okay, so we're just gonna try this one directly and see if we can figure out what's wrong. So this is really the first case, and I think the problem here is that I'm checking if I should quit at the beginning of the loop. So then I would still increment these two, which is not what I want to do. Because if I've set should quit in here, then I'm on a current iteration that's failing. So I don't want to bother doing this. So I think instead I will do that at the end. And then if I should quit, I break immediately after I found a failure, increment my counters that matter, and then continue. So let's give that a shot. Okay, so that looks better. So let's run all of our test cases. And now something else is mad. Okay, let's try, can I run these together? Okay, I can. So now, it's not quite what I expected. So let's think that through. So I'm exiting, in this case, I'm exiting after F. when really it should have continued to I. So I'm just going to glance at it for a minute and see if anything jumps out at me. And if not, then I will just add some debug statements. Nope. So instead, we're just going to go ahead and system.out. Well, let's do it down here so that I know I've already checked if I'm in a valid position. So, or no. So I want to, I'll do it between these two because I want to see the test before the invalid, but I don't want to go beyond the length. So system.out.println target char plus current character plus string char. I think that should tell me everything that I need to know. So let's try that. Oh, semicolons. Okay, so I did get through L. Okay, so let me take another look at the output. So I see F, which makes sense. Current character is still F here. So I test the three Fs, and then I'm testing F and L, and I'm failing. Why is that? Because I haven't... Okay, so it's because I haven't updated my current character yet. I'm trying to think of the proper way to do that without going past the end of the string. Because I need the string from the last iterator. Or I really need the string from, or the character from the next iteration. And I think one thing I could try, well, I don't know if I want to do that or not. Yeah, that seems kind of hokey. Okay, so what I need is for this to represent the next character. And I'm wondering if I could if I move this up, then I need to back up my iterators one, because I'm going to increment them on the start. So I think the most straightforward thing to do is to say, unfortunately, if, and we're going to have another test in here, so I think this is something that we could optimize. So if we are less than, I think this actually needs to be just straight up less than. If we are less than that, then the length of the string, then we can increment it, else break, which again, that's getting a little messy inside of this loop, so we should be able to optimize that, but target, oh, if string iterator plus 1, then array.char at string iterator plus 1. Okay, so let's submit it and just see if it actually passes, and then we'll come back and we'll see if we can optimize that logic, because that got a little involved. Oh, input. Okay, so just A fails, huh? Let's take a look. So a single character fails. So we should do 0, and then we're finding, it's probably here, so we're finding that we don't have a next character to check. So we're not incrementing the last common, so I think we need to do this regardless of whether we're going to check a next character. And I believe that should fix it. Yep. Okay, so let's try submitting it again. And then, again, we'll go back and we'll clean up our logic. Okay, faster than 5% because I've got a bunch of print statements. Okay, so how can we make this better? Because this is a gigantic if at the end of a loop, and that's just less than ideal. So what do we need? We need to break this out. And I actually think that this update could go at the beginning of the next iteration, and this could stay at the end. So let me try that. So if I take this, and then we'll just comment that out, and then let's see if we can do that at the beginning of this next iteration. So now I don't need it to be +1, I just need it to be that exactly. I can trust my string iterator again, and I'm still going to increment my last character down here. So let me just run the test cases and we'll see if that gives us what we're expecting. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and clean this up and see if there's anything that we still don't like. Return. Okay, well, let's just take out the print statement as well. And just because it tripped me up before, let's go ahead and run this one-off test case. Okay, cool, so that still works. Okay, so that's actually not too bad. So now current character gets updated at the beginning of this loop, and then we iterate through each of the strings. We check if we've exceeded the length of the string that we're looking at, and then we test if the string that we're looking at has the same character at this index, and then we update should quit and we break. And I think that's pretty reasonable. So let's submit it again without the print statement and just see how we're doing for efficiency. So we're trying to be 57 and 39. 39 I don't think will change. Okay, faster than 67%. So let's just see if there's any other optimization that we can do. nothing is really standing out to me here. Because we could turn this into, get rid of our store for the current character, but I think that's actually going to cost us more, because then we would have to do well, let's think about that. So could we use last common instead of moving that into a variable? And I think that we could. So let's see if we can get rid of this last common variable. So I don't need to store current character at all. And I'm still just testing last common. And then again, I don't want to store current character at all. So then down here, I know that current character would never have been larger than, or I know that last common, excuse me, will never be larger than will never be larger than the length of the first string. So I wonder if it's valid to check strs at 0.char at string iterator. Because I think really that's what I want to do. I'm checking if it's equal to the same index in the first string. And then really array iterator can just skip the first one. So then I'm always going to be, because I know this iterator will never go past the length of the first string, the 0th string. So then this gets rid of that. Last common character gets incremented, but I think I don't even know if I need to increment this on every loop. Really, I just need this at the end, because at this point, then I know that last common character should be string iterator -1, because I've gone past what was valid, and I know that I want to jump back one character to get my last valid. And then the only other thing I'm wondering is, what if we have a what if we only have one array? What will that do to us? But actually I think that's valid, because if we had a really long if we had one word, but it was very long, then that should still be valid. So let's try this one-off test case and see if this speeds us up at all without breaking anything that we've already done. Okay, so we broke it. Let's figure out where. Okay, so we're returning nothing here. String iterator 0. So since I don't know when the loop is going to exit, there is a chance that I'm going to exit without setting should quit. So then I think in this case, I actually just have to update last common character gets string iterator every time. Let's try that. Okay, so that did not help. Let's think this through. So string iterator starts at 0, goes to the length of the first string. So we should see one iteration here. But since Since the substring is not inclusive, I think this needs to be +1, because 0 to 0 would be nothing, 0 to 1 would be just one character. So because last common character represents the last valid character, we need to include 1 past that. Let's see if that actually works. Okay, so that makes sense. Let's try all the test cases. Okay. And I got rid of my I got rid of my should quit. So if should quit and really I need to, well, yeah, so if should quit, then I want to break before I do this because I have found a character that was not common. So then I need to bail out. And then yeah, so then here I don't know that the first character is common. It might be, but it also might not be. So this should be, our invalid is now -2, which is a bit of a magic number. So let's fix that. Static final int no common characters -2. Nope, that's not what I wanted at all. No common characters, and then if we first test case, and if it is equal to no common characters, then we just bail out. So let's try that. Okay, so that looks good. Let's rerun just A. Okay, fantastic. So that should be, I think, a little bit more efficient. I'm just going to do a quick scroll through, see if anything looks suspicious. And just to clean up after myself, I'm going to get rid of some of my comments that are not actually helpful. Okay, let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens for our runtime. We're trying to beat 1 millisecond and 37 memory. Well, okay. And all that optimization didn't buy us a thing. Yeah, actually, I think we're the exact same. But at any rate, it's using fewer variables. I think it's a little bit easier to understand. But it's good evidence for how efficient the Java compiler is. And I think, I had a binary search tree one picked out, but I don't think we're going to get to it this morning. So I'm going to call that good for the day. Thanks everybody for hanging out, and have a good one.